you can't run away from yourself when you're always with yourself. You just can't.
When her world came crashing down,
I had no home of my own, 50 euro in my bank account, and I had this beautiful baby.
she traded modeling for mindfulness.
I said, I've never had less, but I've never had more.
Now motivational coach, speaker, and author, Alison Canavan is sharing her emotional story of resilience.
And for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it means to love all of me.
While holding the space for others to heal alongside her.
You have everything inside of you. We actually all do.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. This is Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Hi, Allie. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I am so excited and happy to get to meet and talk to you today. You have had such an amazing career, a long career, and something that I really want to dive into because you started at a very young age as a model, and you've turned your career into a journey of mindfulness. And this is something I've seen a lot of in these conversations I'm having, these performance, these outward facing careers, changing people, changing directions and going more within and finding this space of wholeness and wellness and blossoming the second part of their career and life into it. And I just think you are the perfect example of this. And I would love to chat with you about it, kind of see like how this all came about for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. Isn't it interesting? That's such a beautiful and powerful question. You know, that so many of us who are in industries where everything is determined by what you look like, what size you are, and absolutely nothing is about what you have to say or who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that for the first few years of my career. You know, I started modeling at 15, having, you know, at 15, oh, look, you're a teenager anyway. I mean, what teenager at 15 feels really good in their skin, like feels really confident in their body? I mean, it's a time in your life where you're questioning everything, like everything. And then you go into an industry where they're measuring you every day and watching what you eat. And, you know, you have to fit into certain clothes and, you know, everywhere all around you. It's interesting because I teach now on the power of story, but it's interesting that I used to have a story of, oh, none of that bothers me. Mm-hmm. None of that bothers me. Like I'm well able to kind of move beyond that. Well, the truth about it is that if you're submerged in something, you know, 24/7, 7 days a week, now I realize subconsciously there are messages going into your brain and your psyche that are absolutely having a profound effect on how you see yourself in this world, how you feel about yourself in this world. And you can't be exposed to the level of self-hatred that women had in my industry. And it's not just in my industry, it's in general, I think, honestly, is a conversation we need to have, and how hard we are on ourselves as women and how mean we are to ourselves. Like we are so mean to ourselves. Like, and it just started to break my heart that like I was living with these girls in Paris and New York and London and doing all these shows. And on the outside, they were so beautiful and stunning. And then you got to spend time with them. And then the inside, they were so beautiful and stunning, but they didn't feel it. They didn't know it. It was this, you know, consistent, deep inner longing to be seen. Like it. And what I noticed with a lot of the girls is like when we got the magazine cover, or, you know, my friends in New York, when they got the billboard on Times Square, or you got booked for the really big, amazing fashion show, that it was that, what now? What now? Mm-hmm. Like it didn't seem to fill that void, that hole inside. And that's where this really began for me. My curiosity into what is it that all the things we have been taught by society will help make us feel better don't. You can put on makeup and you can put on a really nice dress and temporarily feel a little bit better, sure.
Yeah.
But if we don't work on what's going on inside, there is no amount of makeup. There is no, I work with women as a coach who spend thousands and thousands on the best clothes there is, and they still don't feel good about themselves. So I started to understand really early on that this is an inside out world and not an outside in world. And I had, I started to become very interested in meditation. And during my years in New York, I would go on silent retreats. And, a lot of my teachers would say, it's in here, it's in here. And I would hear them, but I wouldn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I could hear what they were saying, but I still was like, I'm not really grasping what you're talking about here. And so it was a long journey of many, many, many years of trying to fix myself from the outside in. And to be honest with you, I was somebody who was very good at running away from myself. I remember it was a relationship that broke up in London. I'd been in London for years. I went to New York for a few months and then I moved to New York, so I was always running away from everything. It was a theme. And, I realized years later, you can't run away from yourself when you're always with yourself. You just can't. You're going to catch up on yourself eventually. And it was when my son was born. I was 32. I moved back to Ireland. I was about to become a single mother. That was not in my game plan. None of it was in my game plan. And I was living back with my mom at 32 years of age. The bedroom that I had left when I was 15 to start modeling, going, how did this happen? Well, we know how it happened, and we all know how we get pregnant. So, that part of it we got down, But I remember sitting there going, got gone from living on Central Park West, 85th Central Park West, which is freaking amazing, to being back in this bedroom and going, what? Oh my gosh, that to me was, I felt so shameful. I felt like such a failure. I felt like such a loser. Like when you want to talk about how beating yourself up, that period in my life, I thought I had been mean to myself up until that point. Oh no, nothing had a patch and how mean I could be to myself during that time. That was like a superpower. Yeah.
But why, where did this come from? I mean, obviously it's worldwide. It's not just in the States. And a lot of times I think we blame the States and Western culture for it, but it is a worldwide thing. Why are we how have we gotten it so backwards? How have we put so much emphasis on the outside? Because like you said, it doesn't matter. Yes, you can throw on the lipstick and you can throw on the dress and you can feel good about yourself in a moment, look good, feel good, that whole mentality. But you always come back to that person inside. And it is an issue, especially as women, to really understand who we are inside and feel confident in ourselves. I don't think it's limited to the beauty industry. Like you said, it is across the board. It is worldwide. Where did we get this?
From the minute we're born, we're indoctrinated with ideals of how we should be, what we should look like, what we should do, how we should behave. I call it the good girl syndrome. I really work with women. So people might hear me talk about women an awful lot, but predominantly 85% of my work is with women. I do work in corporate. So obviously my corporate talks are men and women, but one-on-one, I work with women. And because for me, I think we're in this beautiful, beautiful time and this amazing opportunity where women are actually starting to remember their power, where the divine feminine is rising. And we are starting to move more into wholeness, and women are starting to remember from an ancestral space and place who they are and how powerful they are. And that is happening. And that is happening around the world. Our consciousness is shifting as a people, as a human species. Our consciousness is shifting right now. But I think from a very young girl, we're indoctrinated with the good girl programming. You're such a good girl. Oh my God, look at you. Yeah. You're so beautiful. You look so pretty and you're such a good girl. So we start to go, okay, so when I'm quiet around adults, I'm a good girl. When I don't speak my truth, I'm a good girl. When I don't speak up for myself, I'm a good girl. When I go to school, I know in Ireland, it's shh, be quiet, put down your hand. You know, like I remember even people, I remember when I was a kid, people saying kids should be seen and not heard. And what do you
Right.
think that does to the psyche? Kids should be seen and not heard. Woo! You know, so it's subliminal, it's sneaky, and it's everywhere. And when you grow up thinking, you know, I have to behave, I have to be a certain way, we start to become something we're not. So very few of us ever feel like we can be our authentic selves and be loved for who we are. In fact, very few of us even know who we are, you know, because we wear so many different masks. Because we're one person at work, we're one person with our family, we're one person as we're a mother, we're one person if we're, you know, as a wife, and then we go out and have dinner with friends and we're another person because with these people I behave like this. And so we have learned to play different personas in order to fit in, because the one thing as human beings that we all desire and crave fundamentally is to be seen, heard, and validated. So if we look at that, like that's what we're craving. What are we really craving? We're craving connection.
Yeah.
We're craving deep, soulful connection. But if we are not connected to ourselves first, we can't have authentic connections. We can't. Like, that's the one thing I learned through all the years is like, before I really started loving on myself, and I can say that now and not feel bad. Like I used to say things like that and it would like a strong, you know, my inner highway of stress would light up. I feel really discordant and I'm like, you are saying shit that you do not align with, lady. And so now I'm like, you know, I do my very best and I'm still a work in progress to love on myself. And I have no problem saying that now. I'm 45 years of age. I am certainly still a work in progress, but I really love the person I've become and I've worked hard to get here. Really hard to accept myself as a human being who is doing her best, who's full of flaws, but also full of amazing gifts too. And I think when we start to love in ourselves, when we start to watch our patterns, our beliefs, our behaviors, how we speak about ourselves, start to really become acutely aware. Like I'm in recovery from alcohol and drugs. I have 8.5 years now. And I realized that one of the reasons I loved, thank you, one of the reasons I loved having a glass of wine in my hand was because I was deeply uncomfortable, you know, at events. You'd have to go to events in my business all the time or networking. I just don't like it. I don't like small talk. Anybody who knows me is like, you want to go in? Let's go deep. You know, you want to go deep? We're going to be best friends. But small talk makes me really uncomfortable. So for me, even having a glass of wine in my hand was like a little cuddle buddy or, you know, my little partner in crime. And I felt so much more confident. And a couple of glasses of wine inside me, now I could relax. Now I could kind of interact with people. So I didn't like those events. And so when I got sober, I stopped going to those events and was like, you don't have to do these things if they don't resonate with who you are. You know, I'm very good at being around people that I love, and I'm very good at sitting beside people and having real conversations. I'm not good at like talking about the weather and this and that. I'm just not. And it's like, and I know that about myself now, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm exactly the same way. I avoid those surface level conversations as much as possible, but it starts to bring a divide between you and your relationships when you finally realize, like, you know, I'm just not going to be that person like you. I mean, I would gravitate towards a glass of wine, a bottle of wine, a couple bottles of wine very easily because I could show up in a way that's more fun, Courtney, you know, more relaxed, Courtney. It's like you put that mask on to be something else. And even now I rarely drink. I mean, I'll have a glass of wine with a nice dinner type of thing because I want it, not because I need it. But I've also taken myself out of those social scenarios like you're talking about, the small talk areas. I mean, I think where I really went deep with my wine or my drinks was in college, where I wasn't being seen for myself. I was uncomfortable. I was on my own for the first time, and stepping into a version of me was like, who am I? Like you said, we want to be seen and we want to know who we are. But how do we get to know that person? Because I masked it for years. I'm 41, just finally giving myself permission to step into who I am. And not everyone likes to see that.
No. And that's the thing, because we have this deep desire to be accepted and to be liked.
Yeah.
And so any hint, I work with a lot of teenagers too, and any hint we get of not being liked, we immediately go inwards and think, I have to change something about myself. And that's not the right way to do it at all. And I want to go back on a couple of points you said, because it's important to just talk about a couple of things. If we look at why drinking is so big in college, it's because people are feeling so insecure. They don't feel connected. They don't feel like they belong. Right. So that's where it starts. If you have to use something external just to go out and chat to people, you know, like this is a bigger problem than, oh, people are just having fun in college and it's just the way. It's the same way as the messaging we give to moms. You deserve to take the edge off in the evening. Like wine o'clock is a big thing. It's a big thing. You look on Instagram or you look on social media, #wine o'clock. And I know when James was a baby, you know, if I'd meet up with a couple of other moms, the narrative and the story very much focused around, I deserve it. I am exhausted. I am been so busy. And the narrative was always like, oh, thank God the kids are in bed because now I can have my wine. And, you know, it requires us to really contemplate some of the stuff we say and really take a step back. And I started to go, I'm a single mom. I've been a single mom for 13 years. I'm a single mom because like I don't have a partner helping me. We're not co-parenting. So I'm really on my own. And I don't say that to go, oh, wow, you're amazing. But it's like, I have never known parenting to be any other way. Right. I have also never desired somebody to take my child off me so I can have a break or whatever. And I know it's different. I wrote a book for new moms, you know, but one of the things it was like, I was super mindful in the early days of the story I was taking on about parenting. I was getting fed, oh, you're a single mom. Isn't that such a pity? God, you used to be such a successful model and now you're not going to be able to do anything. And people were saying all of this stuff to me like, oh, well, it's so terrible as a single mom now and you had so many dreams and plans. Like pretty much your life is over now. And what I started to read is I started to work with moms in their hundreds. And then I used to do big events in Ireland. And I would have like, when I started speaking about postpartum depression, I would have thousands of mothers emailing me saying, thank you for speaking to this because I feel like this too. I feel like this too. And there's great connection that can happen through integrity and honesty. And there's an insane amount of support that can happen when we really become open and honest about what we're really moving through in life. And that doesn't mean we're complaining and moaning. It's like, we're human beings. Yeah, I'm finding it hard. When I was a new mom, I literally thought I've got this because I've always been told I've been amazing with kids. I absolutely adore kids. Like it's one of the things that I know for sure. And when I started struggling as a mom, I now realize that it wasn't because I was a bad mom. It was because I was trying to fit in with a societal standard that's absolutely off the wall insane. It's not normal. Like I went back to work like a week after I had my child. I didn't have maternity leave. I was a model and then I had to fit into these clothes and I was doing photo shoots. It was ridiculous. I was like, oh my God, I'm in such a stupid job. And it's really interesting because I started to go, I was putting the pressure on myself, I was putting the pressure on myself because I felt I had to fit in with some kind of standard where I was getting fed that other people who had 3-4 kids, you know, were all coping and everything was figured out. And it would have been so much more helpful for me if I had had people who were like, you're going to be tired. There's going to be sleepless nights. There's going to be this. However, it's the most magical, beautiful time in your life where you get to bond with your baby. Like if people had said to me, just feed the baby, just spend time with yourself. And we get such an unrealistic version of motherhood before we become a mom. And we freak out and panic because we don't feel like we're good enough. And to me, it's just the I'm not good enough syndrome that's being transferred from different things before into your new way of being. It's the same core belief that you had before, and it's just being transferred. And it really has sometimes very little to do with the baby. It's like, oh, here's another thing I'm not good enough at. Great. Great. You know, so we're just building on it. And for me, with the thousands of moms I spoke to, what helped their hearts heal was being in community and knowing that they're not alone. I'm not alone. And that in and of itself helps us to settle and heal.
I mean, I think that's huge. Coming back to even what you were saying is like being vulnerable and telling your story and sharing your truth, because I'm a storyteller. That's where I come from. And I teach this and I talk about it. Like, we can't connect by preaching or telling people this is how things have to be, or this is, even like you were talking about going to all those different retreats and saying, you got to come back to your heart. Yes, logically, I understand that. I get it. I'm a smart person, but like, how do you do that? And by sharing our stories and connecting with others on that level is where I think we can really see the change, because we need to be able to say, I see myself in you, and understand that we can understand one another. We are not alone. I mean, that is huge. And I think that is huge for moms, because whether you have a partner or not, being a mom is hard. I have 2 very little kids. I have a lot of ambition on top of that. I do have a husband. I mean, you know, and he is extremely helpful, but that doesn't lessen the load of being a mom. And I know that you talk to moms about this and you help them through it. Like, how do we give ourselves grace in motherhood? Because we are not wired to do that.
I know. And I think grace for me comes moment by moment as we move through our day. I think giving ourselves grace is a choice, first of all, to become more present with ourselves and to give ourselves a break. And I love so much of what you said, because when I talk to moms I'm working with, I'm like, you know, I hear stories from people who have, you know, great husbands, but they work an awful lot, who have husbands that are hands-on, but, you know, are not supportive in certain ways. So what it always comes back to for me is like, the first place we get lost in is when we start comparing. Because I could easily go, oh, I'm on my own with my child and I live in Texas. And I could look at maybe 4 or 5 of my friends and go into a story that they have all of this stuff and I don't. And to be honest with you, none of it's true. It's just not true. And anyway, it's just not helpful, right? It's not helpful when we look outside of ourselves and start going, oh, if only I could be like them, then my life would be easier. If only I had that, my life would be easier. Very early on, I had a beautiful and very powerful teacher, Buddhist teacher, very early on, who really taught me the power of this when James was about 2 or 3. And he just said to me, be careful of the stories that you're taking on from society, like single mothers are, you know, motherhood is, he said, because you'll start to live out the very story that you're believing. And that was a really powerful shift for me, because I was like, I can either believe the story that because I am whatever now, that means my future is, or I can totally transform my story and pave a new way. And that's what I've been doing for, my son is 13 now. We up and left Ireland when he was 9 and moved to LA, and I was pursuing my dreams of being a speaker. And I had done a couple of direct bookings, and I had been on stage with Mel Robbins, and her agent was there, and it was an amazing opportunity, and they sponsored my visa, and life was amazing. Moved to LA. I was teaching meditation and unplug. Life could not have been better. My son was in an incredible school. And then, like everybody, COVID happened in March, and I lost my job. And we had just up and left. And one of my beautiful mentor friends said to me, now it's time to practice what you preach. Now it's time to put into action what you teach. What would you tell someone who's going through this? And I was like, you know, I teach people that their life is not determined by the circumstances and conditions outside of them. It's one of the core belief systems that I teach people, because we keep ourselves stuck when we think, oh, this just happened to me. Now finish the sentence. And it has not been an easy path. The last 4 years, there's nothing that's been easy about the last 4 years. But has it been worth it? Yes, because I do believe that most of us give up on ourselves too easily. And there are so many moments in my journey over the last 13 years that I was so close to giving up, not just giving up in the physical world, but also wanting to check out. Like when James was a tiny baby, I did not want to be here. I was suicidal. I did not want to be here. And I really didn't. And I've been speaking about mental health for a very, very, very long time. I'm somebody who struggled with depression and anxiety since I was 15. Feeling good was not something I had ever experienced. Battling through my day, pushing through my day, struggling through life was my normal. And so when I went to bed at night, I used to be like, oh, thank God I get a break. Like, that's how I used to live. So moving into well-being, understanding the power of how we show up, how we treat ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, I started to feel something that I did not think was possible for any human being, because I actually presumed everyone felt pretty crappy, actually. I was like, I just thought like everybody gets up and has to struggle through life and push their way through and numb out with alcohol like I did, or use something else. And I know that we all have so much power and potential in us. And I know that there is potential for all of us to feel good. And what that takes is a commitment to your own personal growth, to spending time with yourself, because the relationship that you have with yourself is the only one you have from birth to death. It's the only consistent in your life is you and you. Like, think about that. We grow up in a family, we might leave, we might, start our own family, but then if you do have kids, your kids will grow up and leave. So every step of the way, we might be in relationships, we might break up those relationships. The only constant is you and you. And if you don't know who you are on that journey, and you have got no safe space within you, and you have got no anchor within you to drop into, well, then you're always going to be going from one thing to the next and feeling lost and seeking externally and trying to grasp at things outside of you until you come home to yourself. That story is just going to keep repeating in another relationship, in another job, in another city, in another part of the world. And I know it because I lived it. If I move to Miami, things will get easier. If I move to LA, if I move to London, if I move to New York. And then you find you do all this and it's like, I still feel the same way. What's going on here? Because it's inside of you.
What does coming home to you look like? What is the challenge? Because what you said is hitting a chord with me very big. I mean, I deal with depression and anxiety myself. I've gone through therapy for years. I've had coaches and mentors to help me deal with it. I am on anti-anxiety medicine that I would love to be off of. But even when I went on that, I remember I was so scared to go on it because I had done all the work to help my mind, to get out of my head, to stop the rumination. And I was dedicated to what I was being taught, but I still couldn't get past it. And so when my therapist said, I think it's time to go on medication, I was like, okay. She's like, you've done the work. You've tried. I think you need a little help. So I did. And I was scared. I was extremely scared. And I remember that first week of taking it. And, the first week of taking a medication, you're a little, I went like a little, like, I was like on a high. And I was like, and I remember thinking, wow, had I found this when I was in high school, when I was in college, when I was younger, struggling in relationships because I wasn't showing up as myself and all I wanted to do was fit in, I could have been such a better person. The edge would have been taken off. I would have shown up so differently. And I don't think that I need to be on a medication to help me do that. It doesn't actually take it away. It doesn't take that feeling away. But like you said, like to me, it was like, that was my norm, those feelings. Like I just thought everyone woke up and felt that way. Yeah. I thought, like you said, everyone struggled through their day, that everyone was insecure in this way.
Yep.
I personally, I don't even think I know even now what it is not to have those feelings and those emotions and show up every day with that constant narrative in my head. What does it look like on the other side and how do you get there?
So there's so many important points here. My brain, when you were talking, was going to 50 different kind of places. And first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing so vulnerably as well, because I heard you in my heart. It's like, even when you were sharing there about what you've been through, I was like, see, we're not alone. Now, even you just after sharing with me, I already feel better about myself just from your share. I feel better about me. There's magic in that. There's magic in sharing. There's magic in community. One of the things I started realizing very early on was that we're not going to ever figure this all out. And that is something that helped me just to let go of this idea of being better or fixed or anything or perfect or getting rid of my anxiety or getting rid of my depression. And I feel like the messaging is, you know, if you are not feeling good and if you present with feelings of depression or anxiety, well, then we have to do something about that. And if you can't get rid of them, we have to medicate them away. And what about if we learned to accept all of who we are? What if we learned that 50% of us does not need to be gotten rid of in this world? Like that alone, you know, that I don't have to constantly strive for happiness and joy and everything, because that's not, we came here as human beings to experience all of it. And that means the grief, the sadness, the loneliness, the despair, the rejection. That is an important part of being a human being. That for me was the beginning of starting to become more self-accepting. That it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to wake up and feel anxious. Like I know that in Ayurvedic medicine, I'm a Vata body type, which means that I am prone to stress. I am prone to overwhelm, which means I am highly susceptible to anxiety. Highly.
Okay.
So I always say, left unattended, my mind and my body left unattended will naturally just go towards anxiety and overwhelm. Like seriously. The mind, I always say, be the gatekeeper of your mind. I think it was Emerson that said, be the gatekeeper of your mind when I was reading one of his books. And I teach my clients to be like the bouncer of their mind. Like in Ireland, we call them bouncers. You might call them doormen here. And so, you know, if there's 2,000 people on the opening of a nightclub, the doorman can't let, 2,000 people in because only 300 people are allowed in. So the guy who owns the club is going to say, there's a certain look and feel and a certain quality of people that I want inside my new nightclub. Think of those people like your thoughts. You have got to decide that there's a certain quality of thoughts and stories that I want to let into my mind. And that process is consistent and constant. Like awareness is the agent for change. It's to me, in my humble opinion, awareness is 85% of the work. Like recognizing when you're going into story. I am someone that every single morning has to interrupt the thought as I wake up because it's never good. I mean, never. I have been keeping a gratitude journal for 13 years every morning. And people say, oh, you still keep a gratitude journal? I'm like, oh, I know what it's like to not feel good, like all the time. So I have practices. The first thing I do when I wake up is I put my hand on my heart and I say, today's a great day. Everything is always working out for me. Miracles shall follow miracle and wonders shall never cease. And then I say, thank you. Now, if that thought comes back in, I go into my prayer, which I always say is, how can I serve? And there's a beautiful prayer from A Course in Miracles that says, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? Now, even at that stage, if I have a lot on my plate, there might be thoughts trying to creep in or stories. And what I do is I go straight to my gratitude journaling and breath work. For me, breath work, and I teach deep transformational breath work from a nervous system perspective is one of the things that really helps me. Understanding nervous system regulation is one of the most important things we can do if we struggle with depression and anxiety, because I had a chronically dysregulated nervous system my whole life, chronically. So when we're chronically dysregulated, we are going to be prone to feeling anxious or depressed, right? And I always think depression is a lack of expression, and I still have bouts where I can go very, very low, and I sit with myself and I'm like, what is seeking my attention right now? Because there's a part of me that's saying to me, you are way out of alignment, lady. You are way out of alignment. You need to stop. You need to listen and you need to go within. And that process, like, I've had so many dark nights of the soul. And I thought when I gave up alcohol 8.5 years ago that would end. And it hasn't. Has it gotten better? Oh, yeah. Like, oh my God, my daily life was being chronically overwhelmed, and then the alcohol would take the edge off. So did that pretty much lift? I would say 80 to 90%, yes. But I can still have periods where I go into 3 to 4 days of darkness. And I don't judge myself in that now. I really don't. I work with amazing people. I just did a couple of years in alchemy training. And one of my teachers, I remember a couple of years ago, I just had a very dark period where I didn't want to get up out of bed. I just couldn't see a way forward. And she's like, I want you to turn towards that part of you that terrifies you. The part of you that you've been running from for so long, the part of you, that darkness that scares the shit out of you, excuse my language. I want you to turn towards that part of you and love it. And I was like, really? And I did. And I turned towards the part of me that scared me the most. And I said, I love you. I know how scared you are because I've been walking this path with you for forever. And it was amazing to feel that part of me dissolve and integrate. And for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it means to love all of me. Not just the parts of me that I perceive to be good, right? Not just the parts of me that I perceive to be acceptable, but to love all those parts of me that are looking, the parts of me that are scared, the parts of me that don't feel good enough, the little girl in me who's terrified to speak her truth, and to turn towards those parts of me and go, it's okay. I love you. We're going to do this together and you're safe. That for me has been a huge part of my journey, is learning to love all of me, because I think in essence, we operate from a place of separation in this world, you know, and we see that play out in the collective where there's so much division, and the division we see externally is the division we are experiencing inside each and every one of us. You know, that's why I always say to people, like, you want to heal the world, start with yourself. You want to save the planet, start with yourself. Because each heart that heals and each person that comes back to wholeness helps to shift in the collective an energy and a frequency that then together will help everybody come in to harmony, peace, and balance. Because this disconnection, the disharmony, the division, the anger that we see outside of us is just it's just showing us what's happening inside here. And so until we can actually come to a place of real peace and acceptance for ourselves and our journey, we can't help heal this world. We just can't. And that's why the work is always within. It always is within each and every one of us. And I feel so deeply passionate about that. And the reason why people don't want to show up and do the work, and I hear you because I still feel like this sometimes, is because it's not easy. It sounds so simple. It's not easy. It's not easy to sit. Like, moving into recovery, to really be successful. And I don't know, people have a weird connotation with the word successful, but to me, I think of success in my life, not in monetary terms or whatever. For me, personal success is being peaceful and healthy and happy most of the time, because all of the time is insane. That doesn't exist. But for me, like, when you move into recovery, you have to be able to get to a place of taking personal responsibility for every single choice that you have made so far in your life is the reason why you are where you are today. And that sucks when you are in a really shitty place. It sucks because every fiber of your being, when you're in the victim consciousness, wants to blame someone else, whether it's your partner, your family, the government, your boss. Like, every part of you wants to blame someone else and point the finger outwards, but that just doesn't do anything. And transcending the victim consciousness, and I love looking at words. If we look at the word responsibility, response-ability, when we take personal responsibility, we get the ability to respond to our life and be inner life and not be reactive. That's what the word personal responsibility really means. And it does mean that we have to own our stuff. And it does mean that we have to say, no one put the glass of wine in my hand. I can blame my childhood trauma. I can talk about the very devastating and destructive relationships I've had. And I can do that all day long. But the only way that I'm going to move through this is to understand that I'm the only person that can actually do the work, that nobody's coming to save me. Nobody's going to turn up at my front doorstep. And also, what I've realized through the years, Courtney, which was a big light bulb moment, for me, for somebody who was addicted to personal development and had like 10,000 books on my shelf and, watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts all the time, is that nobody actually is holding a big secret that they're not letting you in on. Like I always used to think the next person or the next teacher or like somebody has something that I don't. And then when I find that, it'll all click into place. And the thing is that that's just not true, because you have everything inside of you. We actually all do. We all have everything we need inside of us. And that's what my Buddhist teacher was saying to me in my 20s. And he has passed away, and I wish he didn't, because now in my 40s, I want to give him a hug and go, I get it. I know you were saying it to me for years, but now I get it. Wow. Stop outsourcing your power.
So is that really the secret to finding freedom and love of self, self-love? Stop blaming. Start owning and really just accept all of us. And I've heard the term before and I've talked about it before, the whole self, because a lot of times in the wellness industry, it is past, the word is thrown out there all the time, be your best self. And I shy away from that word. I don't like it because I believe we put this idea of our best self as showing up as a version of ourselves that is like happy, shiny, perfect. And I think we're all trying to do our best with what we have in every given moment, whether that's a hard moment, a dark moment, a happy moment, all of those, like you said, all these emotions. So I love when I was introduced to the term the whole self, but that is so scary to really take that ownership. I mean, we are hardwired right now. There's so much blame. There's so much, I'm a victim of this. I had this childhood trauma, this generational curse, all these different outside things that have made me the way I am. But it's really owning our shit and owning ourselves and our own position in it all. And loving ourselves through it, not blaming ourselves and not shaming ourselves. And I think that's maybe where it even becomes harder, because when you have to say, yeah, I did this, or I made this choice, or this is a part of me, like, how do we love that? How do you learn to love that about yourself? Because that's where I think you unlock the true wholeness.
And it's understanding that we're all imperfect. There's nobody walking through this world that has it all figured out, that has all their stuff together. Like, they just don't. I come from privilege from the perspective of, I came from the entertainment industry where most of the world's population thinks that the people I spent an awful lot of my time with have an amazing life and have it all figured out.
Right.
And what I got to witness, which I feel very, very blessed for this, what I got to witness is some of the biggest stars in the world off camera being so insanely unhappy and so self-destructive. And what I learned, which has really helped me, and I know how lucky I am, is that the grass is not greener. So during my recovery and during my time of really leaning in and doing this work, I had that knowledge deep in the very core of my soul, that these people that seem like they have it all, they really don't. I saw the most successful, most famous, most wealthy people literally feel, I used to be at parties at 3 a.m. in New York with like the biggest stars in the world. And there would be tears and breakdowns and meltdowns. And I used to be like, wow, to have so much yet have so little. To have so much yet have so little. And it never left me. It never left me. And when I was sitting on the bed, I remember when my son was born and being in my mom's house and finally getting some relief. And I had just started medication and I'd finally started to get some relief from the suicidal ideation and what I was moving through. I did have a moment where I said, I've never had less, but I've never had more. And that was the real beginning of my journey back to wholeness, of my return to self. Was when I had no home of my own, 50 euro in my bank account, and I had this beautiful baby. And he has been the constant gift that keeps on giving. He is my greatest teacher still to this day. He has helped me to anchor into life, to be so appreciative for every breath I take. And it's incredible what he's gifted to me. But in that moment, I just looked at him and I just felt this pure love. And I was like, I've never had less, but I've never had more. What a powerful place for me to start rebuilding my life from, because I wasn't rebuilding it from a place of lack. I wasn't rebuilding it from a place of, if I have this, then I will be. I was like, I can't go lower than this. I mean, I suppose I could be homeless, right? I was like living back with my mom. But in my eyes, I was like, I had literally lost everything. I had nothing in that moment. Like what we think is worthy, like, you know, the money and the home and the cars and all the rest. My sister and her husband bought me a car when I got home. So it was that moment of, wow, it's not about what you have. It's about who you are. It's about how you feel. It's not about what you have. And so that's really been the core of what's driven my work for so long, is helping people to reconnect and helping them to remember how amazing they are. And along that path, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the wounds, acknowledging, like I have clients that come on and they're having a shit day. And I'm like, have a shit day. Have a crappy day. Lean into it. Go to bed at 4:00 if that's what it takes. Like, what do you need to do to take care of yourself today? Instead of incessantly pushing and feeling bad about not having a great day. You know, I think in the wellness world, what I try and veer away from is what I love people to do is understand that when we start to introduce gratitude or meditation or breath work, I do it with my clients from a place and a space that becomes a part of who they are and how they show up. They're not extras on your to-do list. We do not need any more extras on our to-do list. Yes. We have very full to-do lists that are never going to be finished even when we leave the planet. So forget about getting through your to-do list. What I teach my moms is breath work that they can use in the car on the way to school when they're stressed. A short meditation they can do when they're sitting in the car waiting for their kids for 3 minutes. You know, when they wake up in the morning, how to connect with their heart and set an intention for the day. When they feel overwhelmed and triggered by an email, a text, or an argument with their partner, how to practice the pause and return home to themselves in the moment to give themselves an opportunity to respond. I'm about real actionable items that are actually going to make a difference in your life and going to help you to cope in situations that you think you might never get through. And I teach people that you have survived and moved through 100% of your worst days. So you actually have 100% success rate at life so far. So you're winning. You're already winning because you're still here and you're still breathing.
Those are such simple yet powerful tools, because I think we do take this whole concept of coming back to ourselves or finding that courage to step into our wholeness, all those things, and we make it this big overarching, like, we have to give a week in, like you said, you have to go to a silent retreat for a week to find yourself. We need to eat, pray, love our life. And it's like, who has 6 months to give, you know, to travel to Italy, India, and Bali? You know, it's like, wonderful. If you do, more power to you. Amazing. But then, even then, you have to come back to life. You're still going to have to go back to your normal life. And I find that even with myself, because I'm trying really hard to integrate some of these things into my life. I don't do breath work often, but I did a breath work training where I can be a facilitator for it. And I had some of my biggest breakthroughs. But I find that, and I've talked about this before, I forget to breathe, the simple act of breathing in my day. And I notice it, like you said, in the car at a stoplight. My kids are yelling in the background, and it's like, I'm not even breathing right now. Take those deep breaths in, take them deep breaths out. Or the act of, I've been trying to, pray in the morning and journal at night. Two things that I find so powerful, so simple yet powerful. But even those are the first things to get knocked off my to-do list. I wake up late. I don't pray. I don't get that 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes, 5 minutes in my day. 15 minutes to journal at night. I have too much to do. I have to fold the laundry, whatever. I have to write the book I'm writing, whatever it is. Those things fall by the wayside and we don't make it a part of ourselves. So I think the more simple we can make it. I just had a guest that talk about it. When they find that they're getting out of their routine of doing that, they put their phone at night underneath their bed. So the first thing that they have to do is get on their knees, and that reminds them to pray. Like little,
brilliant.
I know. I was like, wow, that's a great thing. But I love that. I love those real actionable tools because we do. And I think that is when we can build that into our life, we can start to make it who we are versus like what these outside things that we do.
And for me, it's like, I am acutely aware. So when I start to feel anxious, I'm like, ooh, I'm not doing my breath work enough. Because for me, regulating the nervous system comes through, well, first of all, bringing ourselves out of fight or flight. I have a very simple rule for people: twice the length of the exhalation to the inhalation. So 2 in, 4 out, 3 in, 6 out, 4 in, 8 out. But I do that multiple times a day if I feel in any way stressed, like even if I feel a little bit, because I know how prone I am to getting overwhelmed and anxious. It doesn't mean that there's certain days that at 6 p.m. I don't, go over and go, we've gone over today. But what's really important for me is, and I teach about this a lot, is to understand your relationship to your energy. So I like to teach about energy throughout the day as a currency. So how do you spend, save, and invest your energy? And the reason I started teaching this way is because I was trying to find a way to teach school kids in Ireland. I used to teach a lot of schools. And I was like, how can I teach them how to take care of themselves in a way that they'll understand? So I was like, if everybody was given $100 in the morning from the Bank of the Universe, just for energy, every single person, no matter where you are, where you live, or who you are. Now, how you start to spend it, save it, whatever, affects how you feel. But in the morning, if you wake up and your phone is beside your bed and you're really overwhelmed and you start worrying and you skip breakfast and you're rushing to work, you've just lost $200. So now you're starting your day with minus $100 in your bank account. Now, on the other hand, if you wake up and you get on your knees and you pray and you meditate and you say thank you and you eat a really nourishing breakfast, you might get out and get some air, walk the dog, and you're on time for work and you're not stressed. You just made $200. Person A starting every day with minus 100. Person B starts with $300 in their bank account. Now, over time, because everything is about small changes over time. Most people say to me, I don't feel the benefit of meditating. I don't feel the benefit of gratitude. I've been doing it for 30 days. I say, come back to me in 3 years, right? Like, it takes time. Don't come back to me in 30 days. Come back to me in 3 months. But these things, we live in a world of instant gratification, right? I want to feel good now. But these things over time. So if you're depositing into your bank account of health and energy every single day, and there's going to be a natural, if you were taking constant withdrawals from your regular account, your bank account, and it was just dwindling by the thousands every day, and you were looking at it going, God, that's terrible. I'll be like at minus 10,000 in like an hour. Wow. You wouldn't do that, right? That would be insane. People would be like, what are you doing? You need to get more money. Why do we do that with ourselves? Why do we do that with our health? Why do we do that with our well-being? Why are we literally active participants in watching ourselves decline? Because we do it, and I've done it. And I'm always speaking from experience. I don't teach anything I haven't moved through because I don't like being told what to do, quite frankly. So I don't teach that way. But what I'm saying is, I have been the person who has observed myself, just allowing myself to just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And for me, every morning, it's like, have I deposited into my bank account of health and energy this morning? And if I'm tired in the morning with clients, and everybody can adjust this to their own schedule for whatever job you're doing. You know, I just went to a conference this week, for example, and a couple of people were saying to me, where are you going all the time? I was going outside, and every single break I went out for a walk around the block for a few deep breaths and to get some daylight and sun or whatever. Because at the end of the day, I didn't want to be exhausted and spent and not feeling good. And it's so important that these simple, tiny little things, it's like you're taking money out of the ATM, but then we're putting some back in. And then also your investment is the longer things, like taking a deeper breathwork practice, or choosing to eat healthy foods, or not having your phone an hour before you go to bed and getting a really deep, nourishing sleep. And that level of investment is going to be so worthwhile, because you don't know when you're going to have to make a massive withdrawal one day. I was listening to Kevin Hart recently on a podcast, and he was talking about being in a car accident. I think it was only a year ago. And he said, because he's been depositing into his bank account of health, and he actually used those words, every single day for pretty much his entire life, the day he was in that accident, he withdrew everything at once. And the doctor came in and said, the only reason you're even walking is because you had that investment there to take.
Wow.
So the aim of doing this work and showing up is in the hopes that we never have to make a withdrawal that big, right? We really hope, but we don't know what tomorrow will bring, right? And he said the only reason he's up and walking, if he hadn't had made all those deposits, he wouldn't even be walking today.
Wow.
And that to me says everything. So, you know, I don't know about you, but I've never woken up and gone, I really want to meditate now, or I'm so excited to do my work now, or, you know, I'm so excited. I don't think anybody does, right? Like genuinely, I used to think I'm going to wait until I feel ready. And it's like, we don't ever feel ready. In fact, the readiness comes and the feeling comes after we take the action. Like I show up and I meditate and I do my stuff. I'm like, oh, now I remember why I do it, because I feel so good. But I never actually feel like it before. And I think that's important for people to hear, you know, that if you think there's something wrong with you because you've been maybe meditating for 6 months and you're not waking up wanting to do it, welcome to the party of normality, because that's how everybody feels.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I love how real you are about all of this, because that I think is missing sometimes. I think we all are like, well, you have this all figured out. You had this wonderful life. You're just happy, you know, spiritual, whatever. But like, no, there's a realness about it. And I love how honest you are. And it's so refreshing. I love everything you're saying. How can people work with you? Because you're such an inspiration. Where can we get your book? Where can we coach with you? Where can we hear you speak?
I'm actually bringing my journals to Amazon, and they'll probably be up by the time this is done. So it's change your day the 5-minute way. So my journals are morning and evening, and you can go to my website, AlisonCanavan.com, and download the PDF for free. So I always want to give that for free to everybody, but lots of people, I get them, they buy them in bulk for all my corporate work I do. And then lots of people in corporates were saying, I loved it so much. Can I buy another one? And I was only printing them in batches, hundreds. So I was like, okay, so I can't print them one from my printers. So we're putting them on Amazon now. And in the morning, so I want to make it, this was 7 years of asking corporates, you know, because I'm a journaler, and I used to say, oh, do this, and this. And people would come back to me and say, stop doing it after 2 days, couldn't get through a week. And so it's taken me 7 years to come up with the morning and evening that people actually stick to. And I know that some people might think that sounds ridiculous, but I want people to have practices that move the needle, that they can commit to, and that's not going to take up an awful lot of time. So in the morning, it's 3 things you're grateful for, an intention for the day. I teach an awful lot about intention, and 3 action steps, because I want your brain, this is brain training, to start focusing on what you are doing and stop focusing on what you're not doing. That takes consistent and constant training. In the evening, there's a releasing and repatterning process that's like, what didn't go well for me today? What can I learn from this? I am letting go of something that made me smile. Tomorrow I look forward to. And so what you're doing there is a beautiful releasing and repatterning of going through your day and letting go, because I teach about energy. I teach everything is energy. And you hear people say, oh, I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. It's like, yeah, let it go. Let it go so that you can welcome in the new. My first book is really just for new moms. It's Minding Mom, It's Time to Take Care of You. It's for first-time moms. It was the first self-care book for moms in the world. That was back in 2016. And there was no books, believe it or not, for moms on how they feel. There was 10,000 books on how to look after the baby. Of course, right? So that book covers everything from postnatal depression, body image, gratitude, meditation, food is everything in that book, Minding Mom. And then to work with me one-on-one, you just can reach out to me through my website. I generally work with people in 3-month periods where we look at really going in for the story and transforming your life and helping you to do the deep inner healing work. And I bring all of my different modalities in, from meditation to breath work. And I work with each person as an individual. And I think that's really important, because everybody that sits in front of me has their own path and their own journey. And I'm an intuitive, and I work with people on an intuitive level of what's coming up each week. And I think that's really important. And I love that. I have such an amazing job. I don't take for granted even 1 second of people who trust me to work with me. And I feel so privileged that I get to do this work with people, because I know what it takes to move through difficult times. I know what it takes to move into recovery. I know what it takes to work through depression and anxiety. And so, yeah, thank you so much. AlisonCanavan.com, and pretty much everything is there. But I want to thank you so much for what you're doing, Courtney, and for your heart and for sharing today, because I'm leaving this conversation today a little bit more whole from listening to you share your story with me. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You've had an amazing journey and a beautiful story, and your work is really changing. I mean, like you said, I feel different too. I love the connection that we got to have and we got to share, and I hope we can stay connected together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Alison Canavan, for such an amazing conversation. I love when we connect on such a level and can really get raw, real, and share our truths, because I think that is what really is going to help all of us come back home, come back to ourselves, and essentially just live a happier, more fulfilled whole life, the ups and downs and everything in between. If you want to work with Alison, I'll put all the information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on my website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find all of the information of how to work with me, see our books, courses, and so much more. I can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.